He's getting paid. Getting him through just a handful of hours a month. He's a book scholar. And then he said he would help with the track for that.
So, ready to go.
My number.
All right.
Do you want to say anything? I think it's around the your part.
Well, like I said,
Wrap up the intro.
well, yeah, I will.
Well, thanks for that.
6306.
Is Jeff and his friends staying?
So
No,
I mean, I can deposit this online.
All right. Well, I think I hope everybody enjoyed lunch.
Yes.
At 1, so we're going to come back together at 1. So anyway, we're going to move on from now, like we talked about, you know, how the reserve got established and all that, to what ways you could maybe potentially present information, to here we go with some information that you can present. And so I did mention some panels, and I think we kind of discussed about maybe making some field trips. We'll see how much time we have. Maybe going over to Battle Rock. And then there's also complimentary panels up on the hill, just right over here, about 2 blocks away, that overlook the port. So there's like basically informal interpretation already happening all 24/7 at these spots. So the research behind like how all this is going forward and what's happened to kind of get things going is something that Tom's going to touch on now. So Tom's been with the community team for a long time, but he presented to us as a community team when he was just starting his master's thesis, and was kind of like presenting the idea of the radio telemetry and, or excuse me, sonic acoustic telemetry.
Sorry.
So, but anyway, the point being is that he's been invested in this just as long as anyone else as well in a way, and brought some of the science to the forefront. So I'm going to give you a rundown on that.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
So, I'm going to start with an admission that I'm really bad at names and ask you each to remind. Yes, I did your name.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm gonna. That's my admission that I'm bad with names, and I'm gonna ask you to tell me your name again, if you don't mind.
AJ.
AJ.
Laurel.
Laurel. Jean. AJ, Laurel, and Jean. Thank you for indulging my lack of being able to remember people's names. As Greg mentioned, my name is Tom Calvanese, and I am currently the station manager here for OSU, but I did come here as a grad student from OSU in the Fisheries and Wildlife Department. I came here specifically because I came with an interest in rockfish ecology, physiology, and marine protected areas. I did some work on rockfish populations in the Channel Islands as an undergraduate at San Francisco State. And then I went up to Friday Harbor at the University of Washington and studied another population of rockfish there at Puget Sound. So I came here with that background and interest at a time which, as you know, was when the Marine Reserve was being put in place. So my process involved coming here and meeting with fishermen like Jeff, Chris, and others who were involved in that process and talking to them about what an interesting question might be. If I were going to spend some years of my life studying something, I'd like it to be something meaningful, not just scientifically, but also to the community. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. And what we ended up with was a question about, if you set aside an area to protect fish, do the fish you're trying to protect hang out in that area? You might know that you catch them there, so you know that they're there when you caught them. But what are they doing the rest of the time? Are they hanging out there all the time? Are they coming and going? Do they go on seasonal migrations or spawning migrations? Which species are actually going to be protected because they in fact hang out there? So that's what that project was about. And I'm going to just pass around 2 cards. One of them, I already gave you one of these, has a website on the back that's all about that project. So I'll talk a lot about that project. I'll let you explore it on your own. The other is my business card here for OSU, and I'll just use it this way. Make it easier. I'll give that to you, and I'll give those to you. And feel free to, as I said earlier, stop by anytime or call me if you have questions that you think I can help with. This facility is also part of a larger initiative out of OSU called the Marine Studies Initiative. And you have a card in your pile here that looks like this. It also has a web address on it to get fancy with QR codes if you want to go there. I encourage you to check this out. This is about sort of a reconfiguration of ocean studies so that we're talking about more than just fish and oceanography now. We're really embracing the entire system. We're looking at the forest, we're looking at watersheds, the business college is involved, the liberal arts college, and so we're really trying to take a more holistic approach to ocean studies. And this is a good context to do that in because we're looking at this system now. We're doing very place-based research. So everything I'm going to talk about, I'm primarily going to focus on things that are happening right now in this system that we're talking about. And so before I do that, I'm going to ask you guys to share your name and email with us so that afterward we can share some other materials with you with links and things like that so that you can start having a little library of your own.
It's smart.
And the other thing I want to say that's kind of not really research related, although there's a lot of research being done about this, is that we live in a tsunami zone, which you probably already know, but I want to bring these to your attention. I'll pass them there and make sure you guys have those. And also let you know that there's a map on your way out the door here. There's a map on the wall that shows you where the zone is and where the sort of the retreat path is, or how do you get out of harm's way. And that's obviously something we'd like you guys to know as interpreters, so that if that question ever came up, or worst case scenario, if an earthquake actually happened and you were in the position to suddenly have to tell people where to go, we would want you to be able to do that. So that map is on the wall. There's that. We'll send you a link to that website so you can actually get that map downloaded, or we'll give you a copy or something. And just for the sake of being complete about that, if it happened like right now, the exit path is up Jefferson Street, which is right across the street. It's pretty much across from where you're going to be doing your interpretation.
What's the altitude? How high up does it?
It gets you out of the zone.
Over 120 feet or what?
And quickly. And it's pretty quick. That's the best, quickest path out. So I just wanted to cover that quickly. So this is just a brief, and this is not going to be a lot of content. I really want to just give you guys a sense of what's going on, and then we'll again follow up with the details, because there's lots of details. And I'm just going to quickly touch on some things that are about fish, things that are happening around birds, whales, specifically gray whales, some things about ocean chemistry, and a little bit about scuba diving. So if you haven't seen this picture already, it's a great aerial shot of Redfish Rocks. So here's and you can't really see the boundary, of course, but it goes from this point, which is Rocky Point, goes out this way. You've seen the maps. And this is that sort of central area of emergent rocks, these pinnacles that stick up. And there's 6 of them. One of them is kind of just barely an island. It's almost like a wash rock. So some people refer to it as 5 islands, but really there are 6 if you count that. So I'm going to say a little bit about fish. This is a kind of a big drawing of a copper rockfish. And that's one of the species that I studied in my research and learned through that work that copper rockfish, quillback rockfish, and China rockfish are 3 of the species that are of high value in the live fish fishery. And they're also some of the species that were sort of intentionally attempting to protect those species. And it turns out they're very residential. I'll let you explore that, and I'll share a copy of the manuscript once I get it into publication, which I'm working on right now. But what the take-home message is, it picks a good spot. You know, the stuff you heard about from Jeff and Chris and others, that these species are highly residential to that area over a long period of time. And we're particularly interested in protecting the females, because these big old females we now know are just exponentially more productive than the younger fish. And so we have a lot of interest in providing protection to those big, old, fat, fertile female fish, which we also call moths. Hear that term? and it's we'll share some more detail on that, so you can sort of wrap your head around that idea. But basically, it's big old mothers produce a lot more babies, and they produce better quality offspring. And if you look at that, this booklet that we gave you, there's a really good diagram inside that gives you sort of a visual, right here, a little visual of what we're talking about. Little mama, she makes a lot of babies, but by the time she gets this big, she's making millions of babies. And that's on page, it's not paged, it's the third page in.
It's weird.
Oh, sorry, it's on the side, number 5. So we, so that's sort of what brought me here and what engaged me, and fast forward to, this wasn't here then. Now we have a field station, we have infrastructure to support this work, and that's what I'm doing now, and now supporting other researchers and doing some work of my own, and that's all part of this Marine Studies Initiative. And obviously work in partnership with other organizations, U of O, with ODFW, with people like Greg, who's running his boat as part of that. You heard about the Smurf project. So anyway, I said a little bit about adult fish. We've also done some pilot work looking at the dispersal patterns of their offspring. So we're also interested in where those babies go. If the mother has millions of babies, what happens to them after she has them? They give birth to live babies, by the way. It's one of the really cool things about rockfish. The mothers, they actually have internal fertilization. The mothers hold those eggs inside while they develop until they're little tiny fish. And they release little tiny live babies. And they're very, very small and actually plankton at that point. So they're at the mercy of currents. So we did a little pilot project looking at used passive drifters to track those currents. And then as they're out there drifting about and growing up to about this big, this is not to scale, they're now juveniles. And now they're going to find a place to live. And it's typically going to be somewhere inshore, near shore, a kelp bed or a tide pool or an estuary. And so the thing that Greg mentioned earlier, that he's going to be, thank you, Greg, for volunteering your work and your boat to that project, which is now in its 6th year. There are 8 moorings, which is an anchor with a line attached to it and a buoy on top. And there are 4 of those out in the Marine Reserve and 4 in a comparison area. And they're holding this thing, which is called a Smurf, because we marine biologists can't help our cute acronyms. So this is a standardized monitoring unit for the recruitment of fishes. It sits out there attached to that mooring. And in a week or so, there'll be a couple of snorkelers that will go out on Greg's boat with this net, and they'll snorkel over to it and they'll envelop it, and they'll capture all the little fish and bring them back to the boat. They'll be euthanized humanely, and they'll be brought back to shore, and they'll be identified to species and measured. There are some other sampling. There's some other sampling being done on those, looking at some dispersive patterns and genetic activity of the populations and a few other things that we're looking at. So we're interested in what those baby fish are doing. And I don't have a picture up here, but the other fishery, which doesn't sound like a fishery but is, that was also closed when the reserve was put into place. We stopped taking fish out of there. We also stopped taking red sea urchins out of there, which is another fishery that's so focused here in Port Orford in part because of the habitat we have. So there's also work being done to study the populations of the urchins. And there's a student right now who's looking at the urchin-kelp interaction. Urchins eat kelp. We're interested in what's going on with the kelp and also what's going on with the urchins. And so there's a shellfish biologist who works for ODFW who's doing some work on urchins, and there's continued interest in studying that system as well. There's another fish that we're doing work on. The Fisheries and Wildlife Department, Dr. David Noakes is working on Elk River Chinook. This is a nice rendering of a Chinook salmon. There's a hatchery on the Elk River. and it releases fish that are not wild. They were raised in a hatchery. So there's also a wild run of salmon on that river. There's a lot of concern about those two populations of fish interbreeding because we see there's a lot of value in that wild genome in the wild fish population, but there's a lot of interest also in the production of fish that comes out of the hatchery. So that needs to be resolved, and some research that's happening out here right now is looking at how salmon use their, follow their nose basically. They follow the scent of where they came from. That's how they get back to where they came from. But the hatchery fish are not doing a great job of going back where they came from. So there's work being done on that, and that involves a lot of things about their scent and the scent of the river. And there's also a part of that project that will start this fall to track those returning salmon and look at where they actually go. So that's ongoing. That's going to go on for several years. And obviously, the goal is we can't lose those wild fish. So that whatever happens, that's kind of the end. So the end game. So then there's things being done around here about birds, and most of this is what we sometimes call citizen science or community-based science, where people can volunteer to participate in things like monitoring these little guys. Do any of you guys know what birds these
Is
are?
that the black oyster catcher?
You get the prize.
Yeah.
I don't know what the prize is yet, but
I met
You get
one of those gals, by Orange Rock.
right. So here they are doing something they kind of don't do very often. It's hang out on the beach. You'll see a lot of rocks and stuff. But so there is a group that does that every year. They do a training here through the Portland Audubon Society. There's also a group called Coast that does a beach bird training with volunteers, so you can actually participate in monitoring the beaches for any birds that wash up, that are stranded or dead. And then there's also work that's been done around in this area on merlets, on marbled merlets. And actually, Max is sort of our resident expert on that. And I don't know if you want to just give them a quick sense of what that is about.
Sure, yeah. Marbled merlets are a really cool part of this ecosystem here. They're one of the few species, I guess, that I know of that are like salmon in that they spend part of their life in the ocean and part of their life in the forest or the uplands. They forage and spend most of the winter months in the ocean, and then they fly inland to nest in the big branches of old growth trees. And they're strange, they don't build a nest, they just land on a big duffy pad of moss, and they fly really, really, really fast, and they're just like little balls of muscle because their wings are made for swimming underwater, but they also have to fly these great distances, so they're just, you can tell what they are when they're flying because they never stop eating their wings. They just look like, people call them the flying potato sometimes because they're just like a little ball of muscle.
Yeah.
But you can survey for them inland by looking up at the sky at dawn, and you can catch them while they're coming or going from their nests, bringing food to their young. You can also observe them on the ocean from a boat sometimes. Sometimes you can see them from the port dock or from the abandoned jetty. And I don't know, is there anything else that... just this last week, I went and did a survey and saw them in the forest up Elk River, which was a really cool thing. You don't get to see them very much, but early in the morning I went out and did a survey, and not only did I see them fly over, but I heard their wing beats because they were so close to the ground. You know, just like,
That sounds pretty accurate.
yeah.
Your little bird wing beat impression is
Yeah,
it's on point.
yeah, and the populations of these birds are not doing very well, and they have been listed on the Endangered Species Act since 1992, and they are not really decreasing and not really increasing. We know certain things about how their habitats are changing both on land and at sea, but that's kind of the conservation significance, is they're protected by federal law, and when you find them nesting inland, that protects that area of forest from being changed in a way that would make it not habitat for others.
Cool. So what Max just mentioned and the other two projects I just mentioned, as well as the salmon work I mentioned, those all are opportunities to be engaged as volunteers as part of those projects, and there are others. So we'll be sure to share that with you guys as you go forward through the program, so you're aware of these other opportunities that you can participate in as you like. pelican survey that happens every year. There's quite a few different opportunities to participate in these community-based or citizen science projects. And then there are the whales. Here's a nice shot of a breaching gray whale right out there at Redfish Rocks. I think this was taken last year. So we're going into year 4 of a whale research project that has a number of components. The piece of it that is that happens from mid-July till the end of August here, you'll see interns and students that'll be out on a double-person kayak out here that'll be doing some sampling of the food, what the whales eat. These big giant creatures, these little tiny creatures, called mice and shrimp. And so they'll be looking at their diet and also observing their behavior in relationship to where their food is. And if you're interested in some of the details, this is a poster that was produced by 2 high school interns that were part of that project last year and presented this at the Ocean Sciences meeting in Portland earlier this year. So they're looking at the whale's diet, their foraging behavior. So there'll be some people up on land that'll be spotting the whales and taking photos and locating them, and that's where all these sort of locations come from. And then there'll be another piece of the project that involves aerial photography of the whales to measure their body shape to determine their health, looking at how it's a fat whale, it's a skinny whale, and then also looking for when the whales poop. So we use a drone to watch them, and then use a non-invasive sampling technique, which is to zoom over in a boat and scoop up some poop. And then they can analyze that for hormones. It's the whale stressed out, it's the whale female, male. So there's a lot you can learn from their waste without bothering them. So that's a project that will be going on this summer. Again, this will be the 4th year. And there's also another component of it that involves, I don't know if we're going to do it this year, but last year deployed an underwater microphone essentially, or what's called a hydrophone, that was deployed at Redfish Rocks from June until November. And those files are now being analyzed by a researcher from OSU and NOAA to look at the acoustic environment for the whale. Like, what is it like for them? Obviously they use sound to navigate, and what kind of environment are they in? And we're using this as a control site. Obviously it's pretty quiet. And so we'll be sharing some of that information with you as well as we get in. Switching to talk a little bit about ocean chemistry. So how many of you guys know about the term, or have heard ocean acidification? Ocean acidification, you've heard that before. So what we're looking at is, this is, you probably recognize that guy. And this is a student intern and volunteer from the community that all have been part of this project to put out this sensor which is measuring pH. So that's a measure of acidity. And we're looking at the changes in acidity in the ocean as a function of how much carbon dioxide has been absorbed by the ocean. The more carbon dioxide that gets absorbed, the more acidic the ocean becomes. There's a chemical reaction that's occurring that's producing more carbonic acid, and that makes the ocean more acidic. The implications of that is that any creature that builds a shell has to work to precipitate calcium carbonate out of the ocean. So everything like a clam, a mussel, a crab, urchin, to make their hard shell, they have to compose it from that mineral that's in the ocean. And the more acidic the water is, the harder they have to work to pull it out. So this has an effect on their just their energy level. How much energy do they have to put into movement, feeding, escaping predators, reproducing, is mitigated by how much harder they have to work to build their shell. So this is our concern. This is why we're measuring it. And we just started this a couple of years ago, and already, and again, this is a function of partnering with the community, the university, the community team, and all of us working together. And lo and behold, we're learning that we've actually found evidence that the ocean here on the south coast is actually different from the ocean north of us in the central coast, where there's a lot more evidence of corrosive water or acidification. There's almost by comparison, there's sort of a refuge here, that also all kind of coincides with the location of the Marine Reserve, which is pretty cool. So now we have a place where we protect from harvest, and also maybe it's a little bit protected from this corrosive ocean water. So that's really interesting, and we're looking into that further. Right now, what's happening is the sensors out there being swapped out every month by volunteers, and we're looking forward to seeing if this trend is going to continue that we've seen for the last 2 years. And then finally, I'll just say a few words about scuba diving. This is a great place to dive. I worked here for a couple of years as an urchin diver, so I dove this area, the Redfish Rocks, and out to the ORFORD Reef, and it's just really world-class diving. Not a lot of people know about it. Conditions aren't always great. It's kind of an adventure dive, but on a good day, it's really, like I say, world-class. The community team really kind of took the lead on a project to get Travel Oregon to invest in some infrastructure here for divers. And so we now have a fill station out here that's right outside the door. And as we leave, I'll just give you guys a peek so you can see that. And that's there to fill scuba tanks for divers, both scientific divers doing research and also recreational divers. So that's something else for you to know, so that if you do encounter someone who's asking that question, you can know that you can send them here and get their tank filled, as long as their tank is proper inspection and they have an ID and a certification card. And it's only for scuba. We've actually had people ask, can you fill my air tank for my air rifle? Like, sorry. So that's just really touching on some things, and that's why I was interested in your email, so that we can send out to you some links so you can get into some of this stuff more in depth. But I know that it's like you're getting a lot of information thrown at you today. I don't want to like bury you in data, but I do want to provide you with the sort of access, and also want to stop there and ask if you guys have any questions right now before we shift gears and talk more about sort of the research, the recreational side of things. So I know that was like a blast, like a crash course and everything.
Are the whales going up or down as far as they're coming visiting, or
You mean
more or less?
population?
Yes, correct.
So
I haven't seen any.
you won't be surprised to hear that it's variable.
Okay.
That last year, these data are showing us that they were not as present last year as they were the year before that. And there's lots of, we think that there are some systemic reasons for that in terms of the ocean conditions last year, in terms of temperature, which led to changes. It was a late transition to the spring where the nutrients upwell from the deep water and fertilize the ocean, essentially, produce the phytoplankton, which is the base of the whole system that the zooplankton eat, the little shrimps eat, the whales eat, the birds eat, the little fish eat. And so the whole, what we look at, what we see from last year is that across the board there was less of like everything. There was less of that, there were fewer whales, there were, Max, did you tell me there were like, there wasn't any evidence of nesting murrelets from last year?
Yeah, but I didn't see any last year.
There was much lower abundance of juvenile fish in the smurfs that we had out. So, we saw that in our system, and we know that it does fluctuate. So, of course, then the $20,000 question is like, okay, what's going to happen this year? We'll see. We know that the whales are already showing up, so be on the lookout. That'll be obviously, that's going to be a winner for you guys if you're out there and you spot the whale and tell people it's there. You're the hero. So I'm going to stop there. Again, I will follow up and I will send you guys links to a number of these projects. And I've already given you the link to my work and again, my card. Call me anytime or just pop by here if you feel like it. And these posters that you see on the wall are all about some parts of things that I just said. And there's a lot left out. That's it.
Thank you.
Can you set up Erin on the
Of course.
Explorer or whatever, the Google, so she can bring up her drive?
Yes. On your drive, yes.
Yeah.
Can do. This is the nice thing about having technology. Because we can go from that to Erin, who's going to pull something off of her Google Drive, correct?
Oh, yeah, I can send it in. It's a Gmail photo. Or
So I'm going to turn this over to you.
So, give those.
You wanna pass it out?
Yeah, I don't know how many.
So while Erin's getting set up, we're, I think, now kind of switching gears to talking about some recreation that happens around here. And Erin is a friend of mine, and a friend of many people around here, of course, but she will tell you more about her business, but it's an example of something that if people are like, what do I do? You know, what do I do here? You could send them inside to the visitor center and say, there's some brochures on that first table, and there's things like fat bike rides and kayak tours and all sorts of stuff. Go check out what's on that table in there, that sort of thing. Yeah.
This used to be two shiny or something.
Oh yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Erin Kessler. I do a multitude of things. One of which is a passion is biking. So, background, I came from Alaska after 9 years, and fat biking was kind of developed between Alaska and New Mexico as a endurance option for traveling in sands and snow. We have sand, not so much snow, sometimes snow. So what I brought to the coast is a brand called Fatback, and they are based out of Anchorage, Alaska. And I have 6 rental fat tire bikes. The value of these bikes are around $2,000, so they're a really high quality bike to provide a high quality experience. So what's really great about these, it's kind of like a snowshoe. So if you think of like you want to float over the snow, you can float over the sand if you allow yourself to run a real low tire pressure. So speaking of low, the best times to go is going to be a nice low tide where you have the wet sand, or even after like mist, like this morning was great riding, it was a nice low tide, you had a little bit wet sand, so you'll go faster, it'll be a firmer ride, and you can really cruise down the beach. So what I provide is both rental bikes as well as point-to-point shuttle. So if they want to start, say, at Cape Blanco, if they're camping there, I can deliver the bikes for them and pick them up here in Port Orford. They can ride right back to my office. I've been doing pretty consistently Sunday shuttles in Bandon, so if they are traveling up that way, there's some really good riding in Bandon, although right here is a perfect place to do it. And this is a great time, you know, with the north winds, you have the wind at your back, you can cruise real fast down the beach. They can go alone, or I do provide a guide service. My guide service is 3 parts. I do fat tire biking. I also do gravel road guiding, so if they're more like, I want to get out over to Agnes, or I want to go bike in the Forest Service roads we've got, I provide that as well. I don't have gravel rental bikes yet, and I also do mountain bike guiding. So we do have brand new miles, 10.8 miles of trail. That's about a 40-minute drive from here, so it's not too far, but it's our only dedicated mountain biking single track that we have on the South Coast. So it's really special if somebody's into mountain biking, they stop in and they're like, okay, yeah, I've done the coast, let me see what you got with mountain biking. I provide that as well, and I should be having some mountain bike rentals shortly in a couple weeks and or months here. So with fat tire biking, just browse through here. This is Alaska, obviously. This should look familiar, it's right out there. So as you can see at the low tides, you're gonna have a lot more opportunities to look at tide pools. This is all levels, so if you are like not super athletic, but you still wanna get out, you can definitely get out. You can ride these bikes on the trails as well. So I have a guide coming up, staying at Bandon Dunes, he wants to go mountain biking. We're gonna put him out on the fat tire bike. They could also do a mixed option of fat tire or mountain biking and then the beach. So we do multiple things. The bikes are very versatile. They can bring their bags or gear. This is down in Bandon. So you see as the tide goes out, you have a really unique way to kind of see the coast, and something that really isn't offered much elsewhere yet. So it's like super unique, super fun, nice and fast. This here is at the final point if you were to ride up the coast, all the way down from here at Battle Rock. So the entrance is right here below the extension. So there's the road access for like if you were to drive down on the beach, that's where we set the bikes. And you can all the way go to what's called Windy Corner. Is there a proper name for that place? The road.
Yeah.
So the highway is right up here.
And that's the edge of the Marine Reserve.
Okay, perfect. So you can
So,
ride right to the edge of the Marine Reserve, and I guarantee you'll see some whales and some cool stuff out there. But kind of fun to play around on. See what I got in here. Again, all the way at the edge of the Marine Reserve. This is in Bandon. Some people will come down the coast, which I've seen a lot more of, traveling through, especially parking at the visitor center with their own bikes. So this person has their own bicycle. I can give them maps and information. I have an office right downtown Port Orford, which is located on the back of these little flyers. We're right next to Wild Rivers Land Trust, South Coast Gourmet, Port Orford Co-op, that little section, the turquoise building. So I do provide maps, resources, information. This is in Cannon Beach, which is not as cool as here. Riding off the dunes, so you can see we had obviously north wind blowing all the sand this way. So there's some really cool features, fun things to ride off of. Keep it easy, make it more challenging. You can do 20 miles or 5 and you're still gonna have a really awesome experience. So the softer sand's gonna be harder to ride through. I try to keep people away from that because you don't wanna mess up the grass in the dunes. So the low tide is best. I do provide tide charts, and they can call me up and I can give them information. I just really want to give more information to cyclists coming up and down the coast. This is Little Cabo. Just kidding, it's Bandon. And then again, Bandon. We did a photo shoot. So van, bike, fun stuff. I don't know what else I got on here. Pretty much the same stuff. How do I exit like without getting out of here? That's a tour we did. So if someone's really looking for an adventure, and I don't know, how long y'all doing the program for? Is it through September? So after September 21st, when nesting season is over with the plovers, we ride the whole beach from Bandon all the way to Port Orford. And it's about 30 miles, there's 2 river crossings, and it is epic. So if somebody's coming in later in the fall, we're trying to build more of a tourism industry off season. Fat biking, you can do the whole coast, no restrictions. It's pretty fun. So this is our 30-mile ride. How do you like exit? Oh, arrow. Sorry. So get you. I got lots of stuff. So here's crossing. That's the Elk River. That was our deeper one. Fat bikes float, which is super cool. So you can kind of float them along. And then riding up that Black Block, which is just north of here. It's just beautiful scenery. When you have the wind at your back, you can cruise all the way down. As you can see, nice big wide beaches here, provide really nice riding. Cape Blanco, or Blanco, depending on how you pronounce it. Spanish is Blanco. So lighthouse riding, if people are camping up there, there's a little bit of trail riding they can do, as well as the beach access is really easy. And then we have our Whiskey Run trails as well, which is probably a whole different subject. So that's what I provide. I provide information, I provide guided tours, I provide bike delivery. So if they're camping at the campground, they want the bike delivered, I can do that, or anywhere up and down the coast for a small fee, as well as our rental bikes. And I will be expanding into more street-worthy bikes for those that want to do like the scenic bikeways and be on the road more. But I like to push people off the road because it's more beautiful, less traffic.
Safer too? No, it's perfect.
Oh, it's way safer. Yeah, we did a 40-mile ride from the Elk River all the way over to Agnes, and we didn't see a single car. Because there's roads, and there's a lot of trees down. But it gives you a different sense of adventure on the coast. Most people just hike the OCT, where here we can ride it, and it's pretty cool, at least on the beach sections. So check in my office. I've got tide charts, I've got free maps, I have a lot of travel, Oregon information. Our fat biking brochures that we did, which I totally didn't bring. Oh, those are these right here.
We passed
We
it.
did those, yeah, I'm just gonna go. And then, yeah, I just want to get people out there. So if anyone's interested in a different cycling experience, fat tire bikes, super fun. My bikes don't weigh a lot. Come over and check them out. I have 6 of them right now, and pick them up, take them for a ride. If you're staying here, if you're in town, just all friends, you guys are friends now, can go for a quick little pedal to see what it's like. If you want to ride them for the whole day, I do have the prices and the brochures.
Thanks for coming in, Erin.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Is that everything?
We're just trying to get them a flavor, and then they
there's
can
all
refer to
sorts
the
of
other
fun
stuff.
And I guarantee you'll see really cool stuff on these low tide rides. On the low tide note, minus tides are best. Usually I try to get something around 1 foot or below. And usually if it's a minus tide, 2 hours on either side of that tide is best. So I have a tour going out on Sunday, the low tide is like 0.27 feet, negative 0.27 feet, so they're gonna leave about an hour earlier, get the whole experience. Tide will slowly be coming in, and they'll be done with their ride. So timing is key, and call me with questions. Yay. Sign me out of Gmail. Unless you want to answer all the emails. You're hired.
Absolutely not.
Any questions? Okay. Oh yeah, and the prices are in there, $35 for just an hour and a half pedal, which will get you down to there and back, and then $50 for a whole day. Then you can be delivered or really.
That's very reasonable.
It's super reasonable. Yeah, so I'm not competing with any other company. Like South Coast Bikes has rentals at the same price. So keeping it legit.
And you are signed out.
Thank you. That's not my official. So email, call, text me, and I'm always in town. I just dropped off a bunch of brochures at the visitor center. These new ones here. So.
What's the power? Thank you.
Thank you guys. Yes. Cool. Okay.
You got your bike shop.
Is that?
It sounds like you got your bike
I have these at the
Well,
But I do provide some various.
Yeah.
It's a rack car. They're inside for you guys whenever.
Really?
Oh,
So I'm Dave Lacey. I own South Coast Tours, another outfitter here on the South Coast. We have an office down at the docks here in Port Orford. Our most popular trip is right here in Port Orford. We do
New ideas and
trips all over the place. Times. How do I advance? Do I use this?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, is that a laser
My
point?
cell's on there.
It does. Laser pointers don't work.
Oh, wait, there it is.
I have an idea.
But you can use
Oh, yeah.
the old school pointer. Like great hit.
I think it's a screen.
Alright, guys, so just a little bit about what I offer here. I live in Gold Beach, but we have the office up here. I spend a lot of time in Port Orford. Our service area is Coos Bay, all the way down to the Redwoods of Northern California and Oregon.
Down is forward.
There we go.
Sorry.
Alright, so we provide stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, fishing, surfing lessons, and van tours. I go fairly fast. One of our most northerly locations is Coos Bay and Bannon. We have a fleet of boats up there to take people out on the Coquille River. We do a couple paddles on that river, and also in the South Slough, the National Estuarine Research Reserve of the Coos River. And then those places we just do kayaking. We have a permit on the Forest Service section of the Road River, so we can do the lower part of the Wild and Scenic Road. We do paddleboarding and kayaking on this 3 different paddles on that stretch of river, intermediate and novice level tours. So this one will have a little more white water. This is the section below Foster Bar where most of the rafters take out. And then a little lower it goes through Copper Canyon and some of the more flatter water down to Lobster Creek Bridge. So that's fun river paddling. Down in Brookings, we have a fleet of boats in the harbor that allows us to take people out into the ocean, as well as on the Wild and Scenic Chetco River. So we do paddleboarding, wildlife viewing, kayaking, and fishing tours down there. We fish in the ocean. So a lot of variety in Brookings. It's one of the more protected ports on the entire coast of Oregon, so we can get out there even when it's windy up here. Pretty calm in that area. But our most popular trip and our favorite trip is right here in Port Orford. We do probably, combining all of our other tours together, we do about the same as many as we do here. So all our other locations combined, Port Orford definitely is our most popular trip. So we do ocean wildlife viewing and fishing tours all around Orford Heads. Pretty amazing spot. We got a nice little arch to paddle through here, some sea caves out there to see, harbor seal rookeries, 4 different bird colonies, so lots of different types of birds, and especially when the migratory birds come through, the brown pelican, there's a lot of them you see out there. see a lot of whales too. Oregon summer resident gray whales hang out in the coves there. All the different seabirds. There's also the relics of the old Coast Guard launch station. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have hiked down.
I don't think you can.
Not anymore,
I
but
don't think they want you to.
you used to be able to walk down and see it. Now you can only see it
They
from the water.
there might be a project where they try to reopen
I
it.
hope so.
Because
Because
you
it's
can't get down to that.
a pretty cool place to check out. But here's a little video of what we see. This is a cove that you can only get to from the water.
Oh.
We get pretty close to the whales sometimes, and it makes people freak out. I had to do it slow mo.
Was that the whale? Or was
That was the lady that was she about had to change her wetsuit. It was pretty fun. Now we're offering van tours as well. So we got that new van out there. Just some examples of some of the stuff we're doing with the van. We'll pick people up and take them to all the breweries in the county. Go do some hiking on the Oregon Coast Trail, so our beach and breweries trip. Multi-day adventures where we take people to all our different paddling locations and do some hiking mixed in. We're working with Erin and to do some fat biking tours, so we'll partner with Pineapple Express. We're going to go to a couple different waterfall trips, so Golden and Silver Falls, and then the Coquille River Falls. We're locking in a bachelorette party. I got bachelor, but we got bachelor party, bachelorette parties. Going down to the Redwoods, do some hiking. We have barf bags, so don't worry. And then we do custom tours, so whatever people really want to do. If they just want to go hiking, we can take them hiking. If they want to go to some restaurants and do some brewery tours, we can do that too. So that's a new addition for us. And then working with Erin to do some fat biking. These are the 4 locations that are in this. So maybe I bring the people, she guides them. We're going to figure this all out, but I want to work with Erin as much as possible to get out and support the fat biking because it is really fun. I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to ride on some of these bikes.
Yeah, you were hucking off rocks already.
Yeah, I get riding with Erin and we start jumping off things like this. I try to go down some steep rocks.
We used that yesterday because we walked to Paradise Point and then we walked all the way to the mouth of the Elk River, not realizing how long it was.
Oh,
We got, you're sludging through that and you're getting stung by the sand. Luckily, there were fisher guys there, and the one guy had a little.
Give you a ride.
What's the right?
Side or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
He
nice.
drove us back.
It's the best way to explore the beaches around here, I think, because you can cover more ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so I didn't know that. I would have.
Yeah, I would definitely say
Yeah,
red bike and
you
give it a
I
try.
could have called you off.
It's better to go down when it
Yeah.
You can reach us at southcoasttours.net to find out more information. There's our phone number. We have TripAdvisor, Yelp, Facebook, all that stuff. And even one more little whale video.
Yes.
There's a baby whale. And there's a mom.
Whoa.
Is that a gray one?
Yeah, this is the time. Right now we're seeing the pairs, the babies and the mamas coming into the world right now. That just kind of happens sometimes. We don't harass the whales. We really try to avoid that, but sometimes you're just paddling along and boom, there they are. And they'll swim right underneath us. So it's pretty fun kayaking trips.
That happened to me right out here on my paddleboard. Like
Wow.
literally 20 feet from me, I was paddling along. It's like, I had to change the wetsuit. And I just stopped and I just watched it, and then it would spin up and it's like, hey. So I'm pretty sure it waved at me.
Pretty awesome stuff.
It's pretty fun to paddle these rocks here, yeah.
And it's pretty, I think we're the only town on the coast that has a biking outfitter and a kayaking outfitter all together in one place. So it's a pretty awesome place here.
So yeah, so if anyone wants to do like a combined tour, please let us know.
Yeah, go paddling in the morning, go riding in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah, what kind of public service announcements? Erin, what are you looking to do?
So I think Max is, are you going to talk surfing, Max?
I was just
something.
gonna-
Who's next?
Jeanette asked me to say a few things about surfing because you might see some surfers around. There's not that much swell right now, probably pretty much. I mean, you can see right now there's not that much swell. And there probably won't be very much through September. And Port Orford's really sheltered, so it takes a lot of swell to really get in here. So you may not see surfers, there'll probably be some from where you're standing. The thing that I would say about surfing is that Battle Rock is a great place to send people. If people are like, oh, I'm new here, like I'm passing through, where do I surf? Like, there's not many rocks here. It's nice and sandy. It's easy access. The waves are usually pretty small. You might see some people in the water south of here ways, but those places get a little rockier and a little more intense and like for advanced kind of surfers. So when I talk to people that are stopping by and saying, oh, where should I surf? I'm like, well, Battle Rock's a safe bet. You can see all the other places to surf from the highway, but they can be a little dangerous. So there's that. And there's shortboards for fast, big waves. There's longboards for like mushy, slow waves. There's, I don't know, it's a fun sport, and you'll probably see some people doing it around here. But yeah, if you get questions about the surfers or where to surf, Battle Rock is a good place. Battle Rock's a good place to send people to do that right here in front.
Not Aggie Beach.
No,
Aggie Beach is its own,
very steep and
its
very
own
dangerous.
demon.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. That's kind of all I had to say. I mean, I can't think of any other questions you really get about that.
I think it's a really good piece of the puzzle to share, though, because
Sure.
it's right there, and people are definitely going to ask you about it.
And you might see people out there too.
Oh, yeah,
do
for sure.
And it really, if someone has kids and stuff, I don't know, did you mention the dog beach down
I
there?
didn't know.
So a really good learner way for like my kiddos, like 4, 5, 6, all the way up to like kids that are just learning to surf is right here.
On the dock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by the dock. Because it's just a little bit not as shore poundy as this is, which means it comes on the shore, so it has more of a white water. And so if someone's looking to go with their family, that place is really great.
Yeah, agreed.
I know it's-
Sure.
Sorry.